Hi, today we'll be talking about time lapses, but before we get into that, a diet update. Oh, I'm starting to feel the effect. I mean, I'm hungry, but I am drinking coffee. Cheers. So there's just one way you can get a time-lapse or a hyperlapse to look amazing, and today I'm going to show you how you can do this on the Osmo Action 4, and well, pretty much you can do the same thing on any action camera, or in other words, on any camera. That was like my whole workday in just a few seconds. Now with time-lapses and hyperlapses, we're speeding time up, which means that if you want to have that sensation of speed, well, you need to get the motion blur into the video. Now you can do this in two ways. One is the fake motion blur that you can add in post-production, and sometimes I do that, but the second way is a better way, and that's when you're actually recording motion blur. Now on the Osmo Action 4, you can set your shutter speed to 1/30th of a second. Now that's going to give you just the right amount of motion blur when you're moving around and recording the video, especially if you're in a car and things are moving really fast. I find that 1/30th of a second is just the right amount. Now, in order to control the shutter speed, you have to set your camera's exposure setting to manual. This is where you control the shutter speed and the ISO. Now, set the shutter speed to 1/30th of a second and then adjust the exposure with your ISO. You can see here in this example, I'm shooting very early in the morning, which means that I'm not overblowing the exposure. Now, if I was to do this in the midday time, I would actually have to use ND filters. Now, I don't have ND filters for the Osmo Action 4, and I think I won't actually get them because I find that I don't use them that often. I mean, I have them for the original Osmo Action, but for this one, I don't know. But if you do want to take time lapses or hyperlapses during the day, well, ND filters are essential, just like on this camera over here, where, as you can see, I'm using a variable ND. So recording motion blur with the camera is actually the right way to go, because you can never mimic that motion blur in post-production. You know, but motion blur is also important for another reason. We typically make videos that are 24 or 25 frames per second, and that's not enough frames for your brain to recognize as smooth motion. So for instance, if you have a video without any motion blur where every frame and every moving object in every frame is completely sharp, well, then you will notice the stuttering effect, and that's what gives away like an amateurish video. Now for classical 24 or 25 frames per second videos, we use a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. This mimics the natural motion blur. You can see if I wave my hands over here, that is very similar to what our eyes see. So we see approximately an equivalent of 1/50th of a second motion blur. Now this of course depends on how tired you are, how bright the scene is, and well, I think how old your eyes are. I'm not really sure about the last one, but definitely 1/50th of a second gives you the closest shutter speed and motion blur that mimics the natural motion. So therefore 24 or 25 frames per second get stitched together very nicely, especially if the camera is panning and things are moving in the frame. Now for very fast moving shots, you don't really need to have motion blur to show that things are moving fast, but if you're doing a hyperlapse or a time-lapse of a crowd moving in the street, well, then that motion blur really blends everything together and makes everything look more cinematic, because, well, you need to have that cinematic motion blur to kind of trick the eyes and make your brain think that everything is just one seamless motion. Well, that's it for me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to stay on the channel, click on this video over here where I talk more about cameras, video making, photography, and, well, the diet that I'm going through. If I survive, then this is the video that will be shot tomorrow. So thanks for watching, like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next one. This one. Bye.